But the hardest truth about entrepreneurship is that it's tough. It's the toughest gig. It is not for everybody. I'm broken white trash from South London, single parent, drug addicts. Dad died when I was 11. Not that I knew him. An interesting, weird, and maybe it's not that interesting, but it's different. Maybe it's not, I guess, the standard venture model. When you're doing something that you don't want to do over a period of time, it will chip and eat away at you. Conversely, I don't believe in doing a job that you love and you'll never work a day in your life. That's bollocks. You need to fall in love with the business that does the content of the business that you're falling in love with. And then you need to transition from falling in love with the content to falling in love with how you do business. I mean, we all role play to go out into the street to buy a coffee. You know, however bad a state of mental health you wake up in, you put on your game face and you go to the office, or you go and buy a coffee, you go to lunch, you see a friend. So we're all acting to a degree every day. I think the first person you need to be vulnerable with is yourself.
So this is Vulnerable, the first founder mental health podcast powered by Founders Taboo. Let's get into it. Welcome.
Thank you. Awesome. Loving this place.
What people don't see is the shit show that's just happened. Trying to set this up.
Should we fill them in on the shenanigans of a studio?
Yeah, go for it.
There is shenanigans. There's cameras and audio equipment and cables everywhere. But we've got there. It all works.
It does, somehow. This is the first time I'm ever meeting you, apart from on LinkedIn.
Yes.
Which I seem to spend most of my life now.
Yes, it's a bit, I mean, it's a bit of if not an addiction, it's a bit of a funny, I love it and hate it. I think it's such a bad platform on so many levels. But then, you know, if you're in business and you want to meet, the last 2 hires I've made have both been through LinkedIn.
Really?
And then I met some kooky nut jobs, but then I wouldn't necessarily discount myself out of that list. But it's a great, I think, when you tune into the right people, and I always believe in everything I write on there, try and make sure that it's something that's additive rather than just noise or a Facebook post or something. So I always try and share a lesson that I've learned, you know, that day or the day before. So it's fresh in mind. But I think it's kind of cool. I mean, obviously we're here because of it. So.
Correct.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool. We were literally just talking about my last company, actually, before we came on it, and you were like, aren't you still doing the dog thing? No.
No dog things.
No, and you said you think most entrepreneurs are predisposed to some sort of...
I think so.
Yeah.
I think so. So the conversation...
Statistically, you're right, though.
Do you know the stats? I don't know
73%
is it?
of entrepreneurs.
Oh, my personal take is that if most people were screened for some form of mental health challenge, some form of autism, ADHD, bipolar, whatever, however you want to square the circle of mental spectra, I think most people would be on some kind of scale of something. And I think it's so great that it's becoming much more discussed and open. And I firmly believe that most of my entrepreneur friends, having spent most of my time on the other side of the desk, not a VC, I spent 24 years fucking up founding and failing miserably as an entrepreneur. So, most interesting people I know are on some form of spectrum, and nearly all of the founders that I know are entrepreneurs or some. So I think it's great that it's more coming to the fore and being discussed. I think that's a wonderful thing.
Moving into your story in a sec, but like in venture, with that in mind, most founders are on some sort of spectrum. How do you personally tackle that or come to terms with that?
I think one of the challenges, obviously in venture, most investors have a finance background. Most investors have come out of Goldman's or Bain or some form of consultancy or some form of financial throughput, and they don't struggle with, that's the wrong turn of phrase, but they don't encounter the same levels of highs and lows or the way that the entrepreneurs perceive that. And obviously I'm generalizing to lose friends, but they just don't have that viewpoint. Now that's a great thing, because sometimes you need people on the board that are bean counters and are structured and legal financial heads, and you need the founders who are going to bounce off the walls and make magic happen. And you need You need all flavors to make a successful business. But as a VC, I don't actively, I'll always discuss mental health and the different brain types. I find it fascinating. So I'll always discuss that completely openly, but I don't directively discuss it necessarily with founding teams, primarily because I don't think everyone wants to be that open about stuff. I don't ask you when you last went for a poo, or are you menstruating, or how do you feel about your wife? I don't ask you those things. So what gives me the right to discuss your mental health? But I'll make it patently clear just in my natural demeanor that I'm completely open for everything, because life is complex and building a business is the hardest job on the planet. So, I think most people that meet me would realize that, it's not a challenge. We are what we are. And as long as you can build a big business and you're venture backable, then, game on.
I was speaking to somebody about you recently, actually, who was like, you need to have Dan on the podcast purely because you've got a fucking nut story going into what you went into.
Yeah. Well, we were discussing this before we hit the record button. I think most people have some kind of interesting story. I guess mine is very not venture capital. I started off, I'm broken white trash from South London, single parent, drug addicts. Dad died when I was 11. Not that I knew him. An interesting, weird, and maybe it's not that interesting, but it's different. Maybe it's not, I guess, the standard venture model. But got a scholarship to a very good private school, boys' school, and I'm not academic, but I managed to get in, and I managed to not get kicked out. But then when I was 16, I got the opportunity to go for a casting for a modeling job, which turned out to be quite a big modeling job, and with I didn't know any of this at the time, with a big Vogue photographer and who was quite famous. And I ended up with Models One, who were a big agency at the time, the end of the King's Road. I was 15 or 16. I think I was 15 when I first, late 15s, early 16s. So I was very young. Didn't really want to do it. Just was asked to do it. When, I remember going home to see my mum. She said, well, just go. What's the worst that can happen? Your legs aren't going to fall off. Take every opportunity. Go on, get out. Go. So I went. And I found it very uncomfortable because I'm not a natural performer. I'm kind of an introvert wrapped in an extrovert's body. I'm not
same as me.
I think people think that because I'm out there. I'm not. Everything bothers me, and I get crushed by everything. And I, most nights go to bed in some form of anxiety. So, but anyway, I went and then ended up doing that for 2 years, and then went for a casting for a pop video, which turned out to be for a band, Simon Cowell's first boy band this was late 80s, early 90s. And then we signed in 90 and then started recording in 91. So a year of singing and dancing lessons.
To his record
to Arista Records, where Simon was the A&R man there. And then did that for 3 years, but I'm just not.
You must have been a talented singer.
No, can't sing a note, can't dance a step. I could do enough to get away with being in the background, and I could sing enough to hold a note in the backing track, but there are so many clever dials and twiddles that you can do that help you get away with that stuff. So I just took an opportunity that came my way. I feel quite guilty because I was obviously taking the opportunity from somebody who was musical and could perform. But I did it for 3 years and had a blast, and then left and realized that, I got to the point where we started making really good money, traveling a lot, but I was just miserable. When you're doing something that you don't want to do over a period of time, it will chip and eat away at you. Conversely, I don't believe in doing a job that you love and you'll never work a day in your life. That's bollocks. You need to fall in love with the business that does the content of the business that you're falling in love with. And then you need to transition from falling in love with the content to falling in love with how you do business. And I think that's the successful people do that. And then you get into the realms of, do founders make great CEOs? Which they tend not to, because of the stuff that we've discussed before. Their founders are a specific character set, and CEOs are, I think, amazing CEOs are a different specific character set. But yeah, so I did some amazing things, and then became unemployable. What do you do once you've been in a band? I did some TV presenting for a couple of years, kids TV, the Ozone, Broom Cupboard, Children's Channel stuff for kids, all kids and tweens TV. That was good fun.
And just quickly, as an introvert wrapped in extroverted rappers.
Yeah.
How did you find that experience of being on TV? Surely that would have been your worst nightmare.
It is, and it's exposing because the best people don't give a shit, and they just go on. And some of the best entrepreneurs I know, they are, most CEOs and entrepreneurs also, there's a sociopathic, psychopathic. I don't care what you say. I'm just going to do it anyway. I'm going to sell my grandma to make. So there's that side, and there are a lot of people like that in TV where they're just very good. They're either acting and it's all a blank canvas and there's not much behind the scenes, or you get, like in actors, you get people like Sean Connery or Michael Caine or it was Bob Hoskins. They play themselves. So every film you watch, you're watching Sean Connery play a role because he can't get around, he is who he is. It's his character that you fall in love with. It's the Sean Connery role. But if you watch someone like Gary Oldman or Robert De Niro or Daniel Day-Lewis, they're this kind of method character and they absorb and become another thing. So I think there's, I don't know where I was going with that, but there's obviously different character sets that you can fill roles with.
So do you get into character? Or did you get into character when you went on stage?
Yeah, you do, but everyone role plays. I mean, we all role play to go out into the street, to buy a coffee. You know, however bad a state of mental health you wake up in, you put on your game face and you go into the office, or you go and buy a coffee, you go to lunch, you see a friend. So we're all acting to a degree every day, some more than others. And I don't think it's necessarily inauthentic to be that. I think what's wonderful, which we've kind of already broached, is the ability nowadays for us to have a more meaningful conversation. So put the game face on, but still say, I'm really struggling today, or I feel like an arse, or whatever it is. But yeah, I think we're always acting, and I always try and put on the game face and act, but also share the reality behind the scenes. So if somebody asks me, how are you? I will tell them the truth, rather than say, I'm fine, how are you? And then we can have a conversation. I'll always say, I'm just had an argument with the wife, or my son's sick, or whatever it might be. I'll always say a version, not necessarily to make them feel uncomfortable, but just to not have the, how are you? I'm fine. How are you? I'm fine bullshit, because that doesn't make the world a better place.
Casted on TV. Loved it.
I have, it says, people say to you, do you have any regrets? I've got no regrets. I wish I'd spent more time working out how to do TV and being a good TV presenter. That's a real skill. It takes a long time. Whenever you watch somebody when they first become a TV presenter, they look really awkward, and you can see the facial movements and the sound of the voice sounds weird, and you go, I don't want to watch this person. It takes a long time, about a year, and I never really got good at it. I got nearly not painful to watch. I never got past the, I kind of can't watch this guy bit. But who knows, maybe in the coming years I'll go back to TV.
Presenting is an unbelievable skill, actually. It's something that I'm dabbling in myself at the moment. I'm recording a documentary on entrepreneur mental health.
That's a great topic.
And it is so hard. I had no idea how hard it was.
Are you doing noddies to the camera? Are you doing? It's really hard speaking to an inanimate object. Yeah, and being a human, it's really difficult.
That is really tough.
Yeah.
And also making sure you look directly into camera.
Yes.
And not.
And you only have to look
elsewhere.
an inch above or to the side, and you're already not making eye contact. Yeah.
It's something that I just want to get more into.
Just keep doing it.
Keep doing it. Really.
Just keep doing it. Keep every opportunity, do video diaries, every opportunity come into a studio, just keep doing it until we get to the point where you can speak to a black box like you can speak to a human.
Well, yeah, try and speak to this.
I can't, if you look at all the good TV presenters, I know Gary Lineker's been in the news recently. I remember it was 20 years ago he started on Match of the Day.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not a football fan, but I would watch bits and pieces, and he was painful for over a year. He only got away with it because he was Gary Lineker. He was bloody painful for a good part of a year, maybe more, to watch. But you forgive, and he's Gary Lineker, and everything's fine. But it takes people a while.
What did you do after that?
So modeling, band, TV presenting. Then I was in the wilderness. I'd split up with my girlfriend, who was also in a band and doing very well. And we broke up, and I went back to my mum's with a portable TV and fuck all else. And when I left the band, I had to close my bank accounts, so I didn't have any money.
Really?
Yeah, I'd signed a 5-album deal, and we were only after one album. I was still paying the record company back. I mean, you're not rich at that point, and being in a boy band, you're not writing the songs. So the writers and all the back services to music quite rightly get the lion's share, but the performers, unless they're singer-songwriters with publishing rights, they don't earn that much.
Really?
So we were earning a lot in the gigs we were doing. Some of them were quite big and quite lucrative. You could earn tens of thousands a day for doing whatever arena you were doing, or big. They were big in the pubs. Some of the festivals were quite big, and that was good money. But the actual recording piece, you were very, very poor. So you made your money in merchandising, in endorsements, in gigs. Some of the gigs, but I didn't see much of that. And then when I left, I was cut off. So I'm 23, 22.
What did the wilderness feel like?
Awful, horrific.
Because it's something I'm kind of in at the moment. I call it the entrepreneurial wilderness.
Yeah, but I bet it's not that dissimilar. And it's a lack of identity. You got this. Yeah. How long were you building your business for?
2 years. Last one.
So there's this kind of heightened energy and passion, and the build up and the doing and the starting, and then all of a sudden it's not your routine and it's not part of your daily fabric. And when it gets ripped away, there's an identity piece that I think is very powerful, that when businesses close, people have to come to terms with in some way.
My first company, when I left that, I was suicidal after that.
Yeah, I bet.
Couldn't deal with the loss of identity.
What did you do?
I built a weight loss tech company with my mum.
That was the business that you then closed, or this was the
I left it because again, because of my mental health.
Yeah,
that business is still going, and my mum's built it into a multi-million-pound revenue company each year. It's really amazing.
And then you left, and then went on to.
I built another company with a friend, and kind of it didn't go anywhere. But and then I spent kind of 6 months taking another break, and then started building
Is
Luna.
it because you give everything and then you break? Do you push yourself to breaking point? Is that the common pattern?
Correct.
And what are you doing to counter that?
Figuring it out.
Okay. Are you getting help?
Yes.
Are you working with people?
Yeah. So I'm seeing my psychiatrist tomorrow.
Okay.
And it's just been a massive journey. We only really found out about the kind of more into the medical side of bipolar.
Yeah.
7 weeks ago.
Okay.
So it's been a crazy ride.
How did you feel when you got your diagnosis?
I felt pretty good. It was nice to know there was something. I just wasn't crazy, you know?
Well, you are crazy.
Yeah, sorry. It was nice to know that I am crazy, but it's treatable.
Yeah, I think everyone is. And you obviously have flavors that are seriously affecting you. And I personally believe it's about the understanding and the acceptance of all of this.
100%.
Not about fixing, removing, deleting. I personally believe that it's about, the brain is an amazing thing.
Yeah.
And it's that connection to whatever our flavors, because if we're on those spidergram, whatever those charts are, everyone would be all over the place.
Yeah.
And who wants to be in a circle?
No. I wouldn't be me if I didn't.
Exactly.
And this allows me to go and do crazy shit like starting podcasts and starting
are you
companies.
using the podcast as part of your therapy? Is that part of the learning?
I think yes and no. I didn't intend for it to be part of my therapy. I am intensely interested in entrepreneur mental health and how we can build a better ecosystem, basically.
What would you do differently?
With the ecosystem?
Yeah.
I would talk more about it.
I have a challenge to this. Tell me what you think. So I read a lot and write a lot about imposter syndrome, mental health challenges, the kind of the founder struggle in the broadest sense. I also fear for a lot of people being defined by it.
Yes.
Because I don't think it serves you well. And especially from the investor perspective and from the client perspective, we need to hear what we need to hear. You need to tell us what we need to hear. So there's this balancing act that I find between being candid and authentic and open and actually getting on with a job in the way that the job needs to be gotten on with. And I'm always conflicted as to where the line in the sand is, as to where you should be completely open and candid and straightforward about stuff that's going on, and where you should put on the game face and get on with the job and almost to be not discussed. And I don't know how you feel about that.
Hey, can I ask a massive favour? Can you subscribe to this podcast right now, if you haven't already? Your subscribes, your sharing, your liking, your commenting all over social media is increasing our reach, and it's meaning that founders out there know it's okay to talk about their mental health. Thank you.
Vulnerable, a Founders Taboo podcast, has been created to raise awareness on the highs, lows, and taboos of the founder journey, to amplify the raw and unfiltered stories of founders, and to remind those listening that they are not alone. Founders Taboo is a movement dedicated to improving access to support for founders' mental health and well-being, in order to build a healthier startup ecosystem as a whole. Entrepreneurship is undeniably hard, but it doesn't have to cause hardship. We know that entrepreneurship is often lonely, but it doesn't have to be. Our support includes a safe space to take off the mask and interact with fellow founders in a free online community. You can access hundreds of psychologically informed resources and exercises to build up your mental health literacy. You can source and connect with startup and well-being professionals. You can participate in live support sessions, attend retreats, and much more. We want to promote mindfulness in entrepreneurship, harmony rather than conflict between health and building a business. And this all starts with speaking out and breaking some taboos. Join the movement. All founders are welcome. Follow us on LinkedIn to keep up to date and get involved.
I think for me it's the other way around. I didn't feel like I could properly get on with the job because of what's been going on. It was always just nagging slightly. I've never been stable. And what I mean by stable is everybody's unstable in some way, shape or form, but it's either up there or down there. And actually I would like to be like that. And that to me is just being able to kind of cope. And being able to tackle the roller coaster of being a founder in a better way. When you said defined, how would you say you're defined, or somebody is defined by their diagnosis?
When you are building a young business and you're starting out as a founder, you've got the hardest job on the planet.
Yep.
So there's kind of two sides to the answer. One is you need to almost, and this is changing, which I'm glad that it is. You kind of need to build this machine-like persona, this front, this like we're going to go and kill the world and save everything, do everything. And then on the flip of the coin, there's the reality that's going on in your head and how you're feeling as a human, and are you connecting with your family and loved ones and partners and friends, and I always fear that there's a layer of schizophrenia and thinking like that. But the hardest truth about entrepreneurship is that it's tough. It's the toughest gig. It is not for everybody.
No.
And you are going to be put into situations which, I mean, I've sat in the corner and been in pieces, when I couldn't make payroll and there's 20 people waiting to be paid, and HMRC are coming around and tagging equipment because they're gonna reclaim your kit because you can't pay the bills, and dealing with those kinds of things are going to break you. And so there's this whole being seen to be, and this kind of persona side, and then there's this there's the backstory of you and how you're doing and what you're doing now. And this is the torn piece, which is how do you square that circle? How can you be authentic and candid and open and genuinely who you are and be this persona at the same time? And I think you can. My approach to this, which I'm not saying should work for everybody, but my approach to this is I am completely out there. I'm amazing. I'm brilliant. This is going to be awesome, building the thing. But behind the scenes, and sometimes I'm selective with this, with certain people or in certain situations, I can be quite open and bring in the authenticity. And I try and always have that duopoly. And I fall foul of this often because I'm a venture capitalist and I'm amongst people who don't think like this. I'm very unusual in that way. Most VCs are financially have a financial history, as we've discussed, and they don't talk about mental health, and they're not open and candid about life, love, the universe, and the pains and trials and tribulations. So, and my LPs that invest in my firm don't necessarily want to hear my truth. They don't, and to a degree, what do I matter? To a degree, I don't matter. But I also want to build a founder-focused firm that is open and discusses these things and comes on podcasts with wonderful people like you to talk about founder mental health. So I haven't quite found a way to codify and to structure that, but I'm supremely pleased that the topic is on the table. I do think that founders especially should be very aware of when they show their true colors, and I don't think they should let imposter syndrome or talking about founder mental health define their persona. I think that's dangerous. I think their persona should be around, we are building an incredible business, we're going to kill the world, we're going to do whatever our mission is. It might be lifestyle, it might be premium, it might be venture scale, who cares? Building whatever you want to build. But that comes first, and then the you as the persona, as the personality, and the truth behind that perhaps comes behind. Because I just fear otherwise it defines you, and I don't want it to define people. I saw Simon Sinek the other day, who talking about it being lonely. I think that, but if he came out before "What Is Your Why" or whatever I've forgotten what his book was titled, but that there's massive kind of entry onto the scene of, starting with why, I think it was called. Yeah. If he came out with, I feel lonely, and I don't think he would have got the same level of degree of status had he let that define his journey. I think he could do it the other way. But as I'm saying this, I'm also thinking at the same time, why not? I mean, why not? But I just don't think that's how the world works. I think people are scared of truth.
I think so. I think people are also scared of the impact vulnerability can have.
Yeah, I think the first person you need to be vulnerable with is yourself. And you're going through your journey now, and your diagnosis and your discovery, and you're going through your version of that. And you'll find all kinds of healthy and unhealthy ways to cope and to deal. I'm old now, so I've got to the point where I actually quite like the fuckery. I quite enjoy the lows and the highs, because I find I can third party it now, and I can see myself going, oh God, I feel awful. I mean, this is sometimes quite debilitating, but I'm quite intrigued why the brain does these things. And that's my way of coping with it. It's like, oh, okay, that's what's happening with my brain pattern right now. And happiness is not a neutral state. No. We're not designed to be happy. We're designed to be hungry or scared or angry or upset. I mean, that's the human condition. I think we have one word for happiness and about 50 million gazillion for negative emotions. And there's a reason for that, because we need to go and club dinosaurs or hunt for berries or do whatever it is that were the starting points of these anxieties and insecurities. Anyway, I'm waffling now. Sorry.
We started talking about, we were talking about wilderness. And how that felt. Yeah.
Being in the wilderness. I think you have to be, there are times in your life that they will naturally appear.
Yes.
Regardless of your mental spectrum. Everyone will go through a breakup, death, divorce, disease. Everyone goes through stuff where they have, and sometimes the protracted periods of low can be wilderness, which I would define as that kind of crushing loneliness where you feel so isolated and so vulnerable and so empty and so pointless that nothing makes sense. You look in the mirror and go, I don't even fucking want to live. What's the point in this? Yeah. This is just utter misery. And that for a protracted period of time is what I would call the wilderness. And that's a miserable state to be in. That's a truly miserable state to be in.
It's horrible.
Yeah.
It's horrible.
Where are you at on that spectrum now?
That's a great question. November through till February, I was not in a good place with it.
Yeah.
I was kind of what you've just described. Like, what's the fucking point?
Yeah.
Like,
it goes from nihilism to destruction, I think.
Yeah. And then it's like, well, like, who's going to employ me again? Am I employable?
But you're unemployable not because of your mental health. You're unemployable because you've been a founder.
I know.
You can't go and get a job.
That's the funny thing. Yeah.
That's the thing that screws you.
And I've been trying to like dabble back into companies, working with a couple of founders that I know really well. And I end up trying to lead the business in some sense.
You're a founder.
And having to rein that back in is bizarre.
Oh, that's good. You have the self-awareness to do so.
But also, the wilderness for me is like, well, now I've got to befriend it and look at it as a positive thing, because actually I've now tried to use it as a way to lean into various different things.
Yeah.
And be like, that's really interesting, and not just beating myself up about it, because that's what we tend to do.
You're right. I think the first thing is, because most people think that love is some kind of egocentric love, I love you, or I love myself in some kind of egocentric way. Love is actually acceptance.
Yeah.
Love, I think the root of love is there's just a resonance, and you just sit into something, and that's how I've always perceived dealing with mental distress, is just this kindness and this going back to love, and just kind of accepting and sitting in the misery and going, ooh, I don't like this very much. This is kind of miserable. That I think elevates you to a third party perspective, which ultimately gives you your power, and is one of the healthiest coping strategies I've ever learned over years. And it took lots of practice, because when you first fall into your pit of despair, you want to subconsciously revel in it. You want to use it and woe is me and fuck the world. How fucking dare you treat me like this?
So true.
But actually, you can consciously remind your subconscious that, you are not your brain, and you can disassociate yourself, and you can third party that conversation.
How did you practice that? Because that's one of the big things I've constantly over the years been like, how, if a therapist or whoever I'm seeing at the time talks about that, I'm like, yeah, but how actually do you do that?
Well, you've already given me the answer. You said you leaned into it. And every time you've got the self-awareness piece, because you've mentioned that in multiple guises in the last 20 minutes. So you have the self-awareness piece, so you'll know when you're sinking, and you'll get a sense for the depth, and you'll get a sense for, I also believe when you're at your lowest low, there's almost nowhere else to go. So you've been, having 3 months, at some point in there, you were at the lowest of the lowest of the low. So you know your own kind of graphic equalizer of spectrum, if you like. So you have some context. So when you're hitting those depths, you go, okay, I'm on my way. This is going to be a tough period of time.
Yeah.
Drinking water, getting more sleep, being more social, doing more exercise, eating, the staples to create your baseline. You know that if you do the right things, you'll be able to stop the depth and stop the length and amplitude of whatever pit you're going to fall into. So sometimes we don't want to, you just want to go fuck the world and, eat chocolate and sit on the sofa with our thumbs up our asses. And that's fine. Sometimes you have to just, be the misery. But if you start building in the baseline, you start leaning in and going, okay, right, well, this is not going to be fun for a period of time. And just listen to your body. Just stop and go, I really don't like this. What's happening there? And what's the worst that can happen to me now? My legs aren't going to fall off. And you start talking in the third person, and sometimes out loud. Sometimes speaking out loud is much more powerful than keeping as an inner monologue. Say the words. I don't like this. I don't like who I am right. I don't like my life. What's going on? And then use that as the reminder to put your staples in play. Your water. You won't want to sleep because your sleep goes.
Actually, I'm very good with sleep.
Oh, amazing.
So sleep's been the most important thing for me. Because I find
it's
it triggers
triggers
the massive highs and the massive lows.
Are you drug sleeping? Are you taking stuff? You're doing this naturally?
Yeah.
Okay, because I know lots of people that will do from melatonin all the way to the much more serious, and I do not think that's the answer.
No, neither. For me, it's all about getting your sleep hygiene on point.
Yeah.
It's going to, I'm in bed by 9.
Yeah. And everyone has a different version of that. Some people I take magnesium half an hour before I go to sleep.
So do I.
That really helps. My screens don't bother me.
No.
So I'll watch TV, I'll watch some mindless something to fall asleep, whereas some people cannot watch anything with a screen. And I've got an Aura ring, one of those sleep trackers. So I try to work out because I know that sleep is a massive trigger. Oh, but good. That's great that you.
And ice bathing as well has been big for me.
Cold water.
Cold water has just been unbelievable.
Have you done any of the?
Oh, you're taking the piss. Who's calling me Min?
Hello, Mum.
Fuck's sake.
Are you doing? Have you been up to like Finland? Have you done any of the proper icy?
No, that's where I want to go next.
Yeah.
Because I started this little community called the Cold Water Club.
Where do you do it? In London, as in...
My first meetup was on Saturday.
Okay. And was it like a bunch of tin baths in a park?
It was Parliament Hill Lido, which pretty much is, a very large tin swimming pool.
Yeah. Unheated.
11 degrees.
Right, okay.
You would be amazed at the amount of people that are in that Lido.
I know people that do the Serpentine.
Yeah. So I wanted to become a member there, but I want to do more of these events where I can bring people to, and they can get into cold water.
It's a great thing.
18 people signed up. 3 people came.
There you go.
And I was humbled. I was like, wow, you can have all the LinkedIn followers you have in the world, and
wait, just put yourself in their shoes.
Correct.
Right, I've signed up to go and be miserable for an hour.
Meet somebody I've never met before on a Saturday morning at 10 o'clock in the morning when it's drizzling.
Yeah.
And to get into 11-degree water.
Yeah, how about
what
now?
The fuck
I was drunk, I was on Tinder all night, and how about now?
Yeah, but 3 founders came down.
Okay.
And I was like, that's really cool.
But once you built up, that will grow. I definitely think that kind of thing will grow.
Well, I started this WhatsApp community 3 weeks ago. 125 people now in 18 countries are in that.
Why didn't you just do London though and do the Huberman challenge and get everything? Because Andrew Huberman he will talk in very practical terms at all of these kind of almost ring-fenced, time-boxed things to do.
Yeah.
And you could do something, you could build up almost like some kind of regime routine around whomever. It doesn't have to be him or what he says. But.
I'm interested by people's thoughts on how to properly, or not properly, but how to build something like that.
I think if you set out in a London venue, at 7 a.m. on a Saturday morning, we're going to be doing something, and you build up that, I think that would be really useful for people. Yeah. Really useful.
Yeah. How do we get into cold water? Oh, sleep.
Oh, yeah.
Sleep.
Yeah. We were talking about coping strategies and leaning into and third partying all the shenanigans. Yeah. So I think all of those things. I think the other challenge I always find is that most people think there is some kind of instant fix.
Yes.
Well, I've done my things. Why am I not fixed? It's like, no. There's always a period of inertia and a learning. You're being taught a lesson. Listen to the lesson. So do the water, do the diet, do the sleep, do all the things that you know you need to do. But that doesn't mean just because you've done all those things for a week that you're going to feel better. There's a cadence and a kind of a rhythm to these things. And you can, when you're going down, then you start to know when you're not feeling like such an arsehole, and then you might drip a bit and then you kind of come up. And I think once you've got whatever works for you as a pattern, then that can become your rock, almost your anchor to your coping strategy. And I think that's the thing that kind of helped me the most, I think.
You don't have to go into like specific founders, but like in your experience so far as a VC and also a founder and people who you've known for a long time now, like where are we getting this wrong as founders? Because I know where I got it wrong, which
on the mental health side.
Yeah, like we don't really pay attention to the staples. We just go and build a fucking company and
you go and get drunk and laid and do drugs and go and do whatever. But I think there's an element of it that's needed. I think there's an element of the dysfunctional brain. And I'm using the wrong terms. They're too negative, these terms. There's an element of a different brain set and a different way of thinking that creates the magic. You won't be able to write that sales email, entice that person to come and work with you unless you have these kinds of slightly off-center magical ways of processing. We just don't. I don't think founders do. So I don't think there's anything wrong with any of the dysfunction. I think when it affects business and when it negates or detracts from business, that's going to be a challenge. And you just have to have the self-awareness piece. So know when to turn it on, know when to turn it off. And I don't think necessarily founders are getting it wrong on the mental health state in that way. But I am a big believer in the kind of stuff we were just talking about, which is building the war chest, getting that baseline, getting the coping strategies, sharing with people that you're going to go on a journey, working on sleep, focusing on diet, exercise, working out the routines that work for you, because fit in body, fit in mind, that whole cheesy statement, getting your proverbial together, you won't always operate at that level. But once you've got that baseline understanding and you've done the baseline pieces if you can, then the rest of it sits on top. And if you do fall off your perch, then roll with it. It's fine.
What company did you build as a founder?
So I built 4, just sold a 5th.
Fuck.
Now, it's really unimpressive. So the first business I did, I was an accidental SaaS business. It was called The Engine Room. It was an IT services business. So I loved helping people with tech. Well, we ended up bundling loads of other bits and pieces and then built a platform around effective all of the services that we were installing in these SMEs. So it became this was late 90s, very early 2000s. It became an accidental SaaS business. Then there was a social media platform, which was like an early Hootsuite for brands, like a war room for brands. And then there was what came after that? Then there was a video interviewing platform. Then there was the VIP ticketing system for the Olympics. Actually, that came before the video. But I've always been more involved with experience and more excited by experience than outcome. So I've sold stuff and I've made some money and I've invested and I've lost most of it, but I don't really care about money. The money is never the outcome for me. What the outcome for me has always been the experience. Like, try this, try and build this thing, try and sell this thing, try and build something around a movement or a thing, which has not always served me well. Because had I been more focused and more just focused on outcome and driving revenue and driving customers and building a big business, I could have built much bigger businesses than I did. And they were early millions in revenue, most of them, but sold for peanuts and just to get me out. So I had a few quid to go and start the next thing. So when you talk about having like 4 exits, they were kind of who gives a fuck exits. But that was mostly by design. It was mostly because I don't really care. I don't need. I mean, I had the Porsches, the Ferraris, and the first class holidays and the swanky houses. None of that motivates me. So now I'm older and I've got 2 very small children. I've basically everything I've ever earned has been invested in my fund and other things. So I'm kind of like, I need to think differently now and be a bit more focused on outcome for them and be a bit less of a dickhead and be a bit more secure and thoughtful around cash. But I can't say I will ever be motivated by it.
How big a change has having kids been for you? I say that
I
in
was
the context
46 when my son was born. So
really?
my son's 5, so I'm 50 now. And it's just magical. The whole thing is magical. The whole thing. Had I done it with the wrong woman or at the wrong time in my life, it would have been the flip reverse. It would have been the most soul-destroying misery because I feel and sense everything. Not being with the mother of my children or not being involved in my child's life would have destroyed me, and that would have been another wilderness moment in time of depth and length. But I married the most incredible woman, and I have 2 happy, healthy children who are 4 and 2, nearly 5 and 3. And it's just the most incredible thing. It's utterly life-changing, not something you can ever explain to you. Do you have kids?
No, we're trying.
So it's just...
I'm kind of petrified about it.
Yeah, and so you should be. And so you should be, and again, lean into that.
Yeah,
I hate that because that's a Sheryl Sandberg phrase. I can't stand that woman, but it is a case of sitting in it and just kind of just really rolling with it and just go, oh my God, because it'll be a roller coaster.
I see these videos on TikTok of kind of dads seeing their kids for the first time, and it just makes me all gooey.
Yeah,
I'm a very emotional man, Dan.
I know you are. I can sense.
But equally, I'm not desperate to have kids, but I think I'm getting married June the 10th this year.
Where are you getting married?
In Pinner.
Okay. So is that family side?
Yeah. That's where my parents live. We live in Putney.
Yeah.
But we're actually moving up to Eastcote, which is just next to Ruislip and Pinner.
I don't know.
So yeah. I'm 29 almost.
Yeah.
And I'm ready. I feel like I'm going on 49.
Well, there is no good time. There is no right time. There is no wrong time.
Yeah.
I'm lucky because I'm a deviant and cooked. I'm lucky I did it later in life because I know I would have screwed it up earlier, and well, maybe I wouldn't. Maybe it takes the right person. I don't know, but
I think you're being harsh on yourself.
I feel I'm very immature. I'm a child. Part of the challenge you have if you have mental health challenges, when you go through stuff in your younger years, and you would have gone through stuff in your younger years, because I guarantee that would be part of what's affecting
100%.
you now. You get trapped. Part of your psyche development gets trapped at that age or that era in your life.
Yeah.
So I'm very much trapped in early teens, late teens, when I went through a lot of disruption and challenge up into my early 20s. And I know that I'm partly stuck. So when I look in the mirror, I go, who's this old guy looking back at me? Because part of my...
Yeah. And what are you stuck in?
The drama and the circular distress wheels that we get stuck in. So partly you will never be able to go back to the worst moments in because I don't believe your body will ever let you go to the depths in the same way, but you go to different depths in different ways. But I think my senses, and I'm not a therapist, I don't know this, but my senses, you kind of get trapped in these drama cycles where you start to ruminate, and there's some subconscious stuff that sometimes when you're young, you don't have the vocabulary or the knowledge to unravel that stuff. So as you grow as an adult, but you've been through something as a child and you couldn't understand it then, it manifests in different ways as an adult. And you get trapped in these drama loops where you haven't quite resolved something, but you can't resolve it. And that comes back to that love and acceptance piece. You have to go, yeah, God, that was a bit shit, interesting, thoughtful, whatever, and kind of accept it. I don't think you can ever cope with it because... I mean, there are some therapists that will help you through hypnosis or other techniques to go back to certain periods in your life. I'm not sure what I subscribe to there, but I think you should try everything.
My mum's a hypnotherapist.
Oh, then try everything. Jeez.
I've tried it a lot. It's good. I'm just I think it works up to a point. You have to really, again, lean into it.
Yeah.
And really get on board with the practice because it's very woo woo.
I think I tried EFT. Have you ever tried the tapping?
Yeah.
I tried EFT once, and I had what he called astral projection, where I left my body.
Really?
So I left the room. So we were doing whatever this tapping. He was asking me questions. It was about my dad dying and about him being my dad as a young man being stuck in the corner of a room. We went through this long narrative, and he was weaving. It was quite an amazing individual. Mark something. I can't remember his surname, but then I was tapping. You do the tap and apparently it's a way of kind of almost tricking your subconscious into being imprinted with a new memory. Or so you go through the negative version of the story, then you go through the positive version of the story while you're tapping. And I think it's something to do with kind of re-imprinting the brain, because that's what the brain is, a big computer that can be programmed. And as we were doing this, I left my body so I could see the top of my head, and I could see the top of the room, and I could see all of the things on the counters, the plates on the kitchen, the newspaper on the table. Then I went through the roof of the house, and I have quite bad vertigo. So I got to about 100 feet and I started getting a fear of heights, and then I got sucked back into my body. But I know this sounds weird.
No,
I
it doesn't.
genuinely left my body and felt like I was 200 foot in the air.
That's extraordinary.
Yeah. I only did it the once. It was an
that's
amazing...
a hell of a session.
But it was an amazing reminder of how powerful the brain is, because obviously I didn't leave my body. I'm still sat in my meat and protein sack over there. But it was an amazing reminder of how the brain is working out. You're sitting here and the TV monitors are there, and none of this is real. And you actually only pick up like every third frame, but the brain fills in the rest, because otherwise you'd just be exhausted because it needs to pattern match. So it just reminded me of how the brain is this kind of weird, wonderful, programmable thing that does all these things that aren't always necessarily going to make you feel good.
What do you love about venture?
Nothing much. I love startups. I love founders. I love building new things. I could give two shits about being a VC. I don't particularly like the industry.
What don't you like about it?
So to me, in my head, founding, and then I was angel investing and interim CEOing and dicking around, and I didn't have that much money, but I'd do like 5, 10, 20, 50K here and there, whatever it was. And then it felt natural to go, well, I want more money to invest. So I want to do millions per ticket, not 20K or whatever it was. So set up a fund, take other people's money, and I put all my money in and take other people's money in and, invest. And now our average ticket size for Fund 2 is about £1 million. But what I didn't realize was that it's all just kissing people in the ear and LPs and spreadsheets and term sheets. And I don't give a shit. I don't care. And also I'm not building anything, even though my firm is still, it's only second fund 5 years old. So it's still a startup investing in startups. I don't care about any of that stuff. I only care about building and working with founders and building new things to change the world in new ways. My personal purpose is to build things that help people.
Yeah.
That's all I want to do. And I've chosen business because you can have the most impact. If you get the efficiency and productivity in business right, you can have the most impact. It's the thing that I can help move the needle for more in the most, as in if we really want to kind of change how we work and impact on climate and water, food production, whatever it might be, you need more efficiency and more productivity in systems. So that's the direction of travel. But venture capital is full of assholes, and actually it's not true. I've met some really wonderful people, but it's not nice. It doesn't solve that much for that many. It's not a natural path for 95% of startups are not venture backable.
No. And 95% of startups think they are venture backable.
Yeah, I would say you're pretty right. I mean, it seems to be like almost people think, well, I've built a business and I can make it grow and therefore I need venture capital. No. Just read Powell or understand what VC is and how it works. And it's gambling, and we only have so many chips, and we have investors upstream, and we've got so many bets to place, and they all need to be potential fund returners. And if you haven't got a venture backable thing, and you're not venture backable as a founder, which kind of turns us back to this, I need to hear what I need to hear about founders, not imposter syndrome and woe is me. No, you're going to kill it. I kind of know, but I don't need to know. That's the juxtaposition. But venture capital is a very specific beast for a very specific purpose that most people don't understand.
Do you think it's an addiction?
Because
because you said it's gambling, right?
Yeah.
And of course, doing gambling for professionally essentially is what you're doing.
Yeah, but it's you don't get the dopamine hit of, if I do well, I'll know in 5-10 years.
Yeah.
So if what I was doing was then, in a week, getting a hit, or in a day, or, the GG's coming in on the line or whatever it might be, that I think would be an addiction. So I think it's not an addiction. I think it's misunderstood. I think it needs to shift. I think the whole industry needs to change, or other versions which are coming through. The other versions of venture, inverted commas, are coming through. But it's not a nice thing. It's just not a nice industry. It's not nice. Nothing nice about it. It's harsh, and this kind of brutality around this gambling nature. It's just not. It just doesn't sit well with my values. Don't really care.
So why go into it?
I met my business partner, who is the most incredible human, who's born to be a venture capitalist. He's everything that I'm not, which all good relationships have this kind of duopoly. And so I want to, put my pants on my head and set them on fire. And he wants to build algorithms for a living. And he's very structured, legal, polymath brain. He's just an awesome individual. And we were working with a friend, and he said, well, let's do it. I said, sure, because it just felt like a natural evolution. I didn't think about it. I never think about much. So I didn't really think about it. I said, sure. Okay, how much do you need to put in? Well, it's going to be $500,000 stuff. Fine, okay, I'll find something. And it kind of just happened. And then we did fund one. I was like, don't really like this very much, but I've committed. So I'm going to see this through. And then fund two is like, okay. now we've signed up, some big investors, and we've done, I think, 28 deals so far in 3 years. About 10 a year. That's right, about 10 a year. And I love the founders that I work with. Most of them, not all of them, most of them like me. Some of them don't. But so I'm in, and
what do you look for in a deal?
It's the fundamental. Can you sell? Do I believe you? And do they care? Will they buy from you? Can you build a team? Can you build a big business? Do they care? Are there enough of them over there to buy more? And are there, where would you go next? And what secrets do you have? What trends are you leaning into? So it's fairly stock standard stuff, but it all starts with the founding team and the founding team dynamic. And then are they building something that people care about? And then you layer it out into market, but it's team and market. And most of the time I say no, it's because I don't buy the founder.
Interesting.
So most of the problem, I am more candid than most, even though I can't tell sometimes the full truth, because I'm telling you that you either have an ugly baby or you are an ugly baby.
Correct. Yeah.
Um,
It's a very, very nice way of putting it.
and that's not my place. It's only my opinion. What do I know? Who are you? So often that's not my place. Although I will often say, I don't buy you. I'm not buying this. I'm not buying the.
How do founders react when you say that? Because I imagine that would go down like a shit sandwich.
Yeah, it's a cup of cold sick.
Yeah.
But I feel like there's something in the message that they mostly, what they tell me to my face is obviously all nice, but what they say behind my back is a different thing. And they don't need to. They can tell me square to my face. And I've had people saying, I don't, thank you, I don't buy it. I don't believe you. I don't buy it. I don't agree, in other words. And I love that. It's like, good for you, because you need to have complete self-belief and you go for it despite me. Some people say, okay, interesting feedback, and it's quite painful to take, but they're going to take it on board and they're going to work on stuff. And I'm working with a guy at the moment who I've said, that I don't believe you can build a big business. And I don't believe you're the right person for the job. Can he then use that or hear that more than once? Because I don't believe in just hearing one piece of it. You kind of got to get a sense of it from more people than one source. And then there's probably something in it rather than one person's opinion. And then can you bring that resource in? Can you get coaching, train, get consulting into to be the best version of you? And then can you bring in co-founder or senior founding team person resource to fill those gaps? And I think if you have the self-awareness piece and this kind of inbuilt self-belief and this ability to switch it on, not that kind of switch to go, I'm going to sell my grandma on one arm, and then on the other go, okay, I need to listen and learn and take on some coaching advice. If you can do that, I think you've got a fighting chance of not only learning the skills, whatever you're missing, but also filling the gaps where it's not you and you shouldn't be doing it.
I'm kind of interested in how, well, the dynamic of Superseed and whether do you have access to therapists for founders, etc.
No, it's not something we would broach. It's not our place to do that.
Why not?
Because the brutality, the commercial brutality of it is if you're ready, and part of that is you personally and you commercially, there's a balancing act there. If you're ready and the time is right for the thing, then we're off to the races. This is not a case of you're not quite ready, but part of that is personal development, and therefore we're going to have some therapists into. Now, all of that said, I think there is definitely, when I started my first business, I had a coach. I took on 3 and the first 2 didn't work, but the third one did work really well. And we're still 25 years later. It was his birthday on Thursday, and I love him, and he lives in Australia. He's going to come over. We're going to hang out. And there is a lot of therapy wrapped into coaching,
yes,
or consulting or mentoring. And the best support mechanisms I know, the person on the other side of the desk knows which hat to wear. So one day they're a therapist, the next day they're a coach, they're asking you the right questions, and then they're a consultant, just fucking do it. Then they're a mentor, come on, you can do it. And then they can flip these hats. Now that I completely endorse and encourage, and we are speaking and working with a number of non-execs, coaches, and whatever is right, but it would never be explicitly a personal therapist. It would always be pseudo wrapped in something else.
Interesting. It's really interesting. This has been really cool.
What a pleasure. Good luck with your series.
Well,
good luck with your doc.
Yeah.
So are they all wrapped together? Are you using this in the documentary? How are you going to do it?
Not really. This is completely different to the documentary, but this is more just, we're actually going to be rebranding this podcast to.
Why not combine them?
Combine what?
Well, your documentary's on founder mental health.
Yeah.
And you're talking with VCs and founders about mental health.
Yeah. We will combine. We're doing some behind the scenes and some episodes, etc. So I've got film producers doing that coming in. For example, we had a startup psychologist where you were sat, a guy called Yariv Ganor, who was sat there a couple of weeks ago, and we had all the camera crew in here, which was pretty cool.
Right.
But we're rebranding this podcast away from Vulnerable, because from my perspective, I couldn't quite join the dots with Vulnerable as a brand, because I would struggle with negative namings. Yeah, That's exactly how I started the podcast in quite a lull.
Yeah.
And I actually think it's affected the kind of branding of the podcast being totally transparent.
Yeah.
So we're going to change the name to Founders Untold.
Okay.
And
that does sound like a DEI play, though. It doesn't sound like a mental health play.
Oh, interesting. That's good feedback.
Well, I don't know if it is, but I've always struggled with mental health as a moniker. Because
Me too.
To me, it's about mental wellness and mental strength and mental
Correct.
fortitude.
Yeah.
So, because it's one of those weird phrases like mental health. It's like, where am I going to get to? Some kind of nihilistic state of neutral? No. This is about understanding that this is okay. This is okay. This is okay. All you need to do is work out where you fit and how you are.
Well, Alistair Campbell talks about it as having a jar.
Yeah.
And each time you go back, you're stuck in a bit of a rut, basically. You go back to this jar, which has all your fundamentals in it.
Yeah.
Am I filling this jar properly?
Yeah.
Am I getting up to the top? And is it full? What do I need to do to get it full? And I don't think, like, mental health is a bit of a problem for me anyway, from a naming perspective.
Yeah.
I think if you struggle, you need to know there's hope and options.
Yep.
And you cannot wallow for long.
Why not?
Because you've got to take responsibility for your mental health.
Sure, but you don't want to at that moment in time.
No, that's why it's okay to wallow,
Okay.
but not stay there for too long, I don't think. And that's where you've got to have a responsibility piece. You've got to take responsibility, because in reality, until you take responsibility for your own mental health, nobody's going to do it for you.
No.
And I think that's how, to your point, like, what are the different types of names can we not rebrand mental health, but talk about mental health in a different way?
Yeah.
Which is one of the reasons why I want to rename this podcast, because I think that venture and entrepreneurship is going to really turn a interesting corner really soon.
What do you think is going to happen?
I just think that it's going to become more accepted.
Which bit?
What we've spoken about. Founders struggling, how to package that, venture helping, and venture being open as well. And I do think we're seeing that.
I think it's lip service.
Interesting.
I think it's lip service. I think it's a little bit with the diversity, a little bit with female founders, a little bit with there is a commercial brutality to venture capital that cannot not invest in winners.
Yes.
And anything that is perceived to not be a complete clean Ivy League middle-aged white man pattern match winner, fuck off, with all the best will in the world. So I think there are ways that it can be improved. I would fear for the reality around that. And
I'm not trying to sound naive either.
Mm.
I appreciate that it does sound slightly naive, but equally, I think, yes, venture needs to back winners, but equally, if venture also doesn't appreciate the landscape of what is currently the state of play, which is not a very good state, I would say, in terms of founder mental health, then actually the funds, if we can also prove, and there is research being done by some very, very interesting people at the moment, Michael Freeman in the States, Yuta Stephen at King's in London, around, can you improve founder mental health so that venture can increase its returns even by 1 or 2%, which would have such a massive impact on returns for everybody? And can we safeguard founder mental health and talk about it so actually we can see some sort of improved financial return for venture? That's a really interesting take. And it was only until I came across what Yuta's doing at King's that I was like, that makes a lot of sense to me.
Mm.
And there's now something in the States by Naveed Lalani, who's founder of Pioneer Mind, backed by Silicon Valley Bank, but that is no more, of course.
It's just slightly different overcoat.
But he's done this incredible thing over the last 3 weeks, which is he's had over 1,000 VCs sign up to the Founder Mental Health Pledge.
Yeah.
But
all of that virtue signaling
correct.
in one book.
Yeah,
well done.
Exactly. And I was on a panel 10 days ago, last week, with him and about 20 other names in this space.
Yeah.
And I was like, look, this is great what you've done. Yeah, you've signed up YC, like Antler, Sequoia, etc. But is this a knee-jerk reaction post Silicon Valley Bank? Or are we actually going to take any action?
I don't know what the action would be.
And this is what we need to figure out.
Yeah, because I promise you, as soon as we're sat here, that unless you have fund returners in your portfolio, nothing else matters.
No. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Lovely to see you in the real world.
I know.
Huh.
Do you drink whiskey?
I gave up booze 3 years ago.
Really?
Yeah.
Have you got time after this for
I haven't. I've got a dinner.
Motherfucker.
We've got
I'll go and have
Q2
a whiskey
kickoff,
myself.
But I'll come and watch you have a whiskey.
Cool.
I used to
been
love
awesome.
whiskey.
Yeah, I really
I
love
love Lowland peaty whiskies like Islays.
I love Japanese whiskey.
Oh, I've had a few. They were interesting.
I found out I was wheat and dairy intolerant.
You need to be careful of the booze.
Yeah, and therefore I gave up beer, gin, wine,
Oh.
and now I'm on to kind of whiskey.
If you're in the mood, stop.
What? Fully?
Best thing I ever did.
Really?
Yeah. Yeah. If as and when you're in the mood, just quit the booze.
How's it affected you?
I don't have the highs and lows. I don't have the like the Monday blues or what the just clarity. I feel fitter. I'm a massive addiction to, when you give up booze, you get addicted to sugar. Because I was drinking a lot, and have done in my founder journey, and I've always used it as an unhealthy coping strategy. If I'm angry, I get wankered, and if I want to take a chill, I'll have a glass, take an edge off, the usual. And I was starting to use it as a tool. Not massively problematic, but getting chubby than I am, and just feeling slovenly and just heavy, and drinking on a Friday to get over the week, and then losing the Saturday at least because I'm not completely mentally sharp.
Yes.
Fuck that.
Yeah.
Fuck that. And it's just had such a massive impact on my life.
Really?
Yeah. And then, just on every level, the clarity, the lack of, or the fewer roller coasters, the mental strength and the capacity and the ability to work harder and do more and just be present with my kids, the whole thing.
I'm not far away from that, I must admit.
It's a timing thing. It took me 4 attempts to give up booze.
Really?
I did a month, 3 months, a month. And then I remember going out, it was my friend's stag do. We went to the horse races and we were going to get absolutely bladdered, as you do on a stag do, and talk about boobs. And then I remember I was stood at the bar and I bought a pint of Guinness. I used to like a Guinness every night. I was not a massive Guinness fan, but I was a big whiskey head and loved red wine. And then bought this pint of Guinness, and I was halfway through it and I put it on the bar and I looked and went, oh, that's my last pint. That's it. I hadn't planned. There was no deep, dark and meaningful. Finished the pint, put it down, and that was it.
Literally? Really?
Yeah. 3 Februaries ago, so three and a bit years ago.
So put it down and go,
Done.
Not for me anymore.
I'm done. I love you, and I've had such a good time. Never say never. I used to love booze, and it's a great way to get laid and be social and do all the things that whatever. But nah.
Wow, that's amazing. That really is amazing. I did 6 months recently. 6 months 3 years ago.
Okay.
But I was I actually believe that if I hadn't given up at the stage I did for 6 months, I probably would have taken my life.
Yeah.
Because
it can enable you.
Because I had 2
like
attempts.
cocaine. A friend of mine was big drinks and started doing too much gear, and and apparently people who take cocaine with alcohol, they get this kind of invincibility feeling. I can kill and he hung himself like Michael Hutchins, like, fuck it, I'm off. And I'm not convinced, had he not been on the gear and the booze, that he would have taken his life. But it's just a harsh reality. Sometimes we get to those deeper planes. But if you're when the time is right and you're in the mood,
I will do.
Just reflect on it.
I think it's close.
Should we go and have a whiskey?
Yeah. Amazing. That's a wrap.